that. And welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. And I am Marilyn London, membership chairman and board member of the Friends of the Stirling Road Library. I would like to thank all of you who are in the gallery, who are friends of the library. It is because of you that we are able to have Shelly with us tonight. And he is a gem, of which you all realize that. And we have other people who we absolutely think are great as well. And many of our programs are on Zoom in the evenings. We are back in the library for our daytime programs, and there are many there. But I know many of you don't live in Broward County. And so for you, we are continuing our Zooms as we have right through COVID, and our programs are great. Membership to become a friend is $10 a year, starting at $10 a year, and the biggest bargain in town, right, Jackie? And it doesn't get better than that. I mean, you couldn't even have one session with Shelly for $10 for one time. So this is a bargain. Please join us and become a friend. Check us out at www.stirlingfriends.org and follow the prompts. And we look forward to you joining us. For those of you who are friends, I hope you are all getting your newsletters. If you are not getting them, please let us know, and we will make sure that you do get them, because that's the way you find out all of the information. I think that if there isn't anything overly out of the extraordinary for the month of December, so that just follow what you see, and I hope you join us when you can. Tonight, well, last time it was France and Canada, which, being Canadian from Montreal, I so missed not being with you, but I was away. So I did watch the I did watch everything on YouTube, and it was great, and we're so lucky to be able to do that. And so now we're going all way over to Bhutan, which is the polar opposite of our total way of life. And this will be a very wonderful comparison, the pluses and the minuses. So Shelly, take us to Bhutan and maybe keep us there.
I'd like to. Thank you, Marilyn. Good evening. I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. It's nice to see you. And yes, The Monk with a Gun. Well, this month, the two films are Asian, but we'll get into the other film later. But The Monk with a Gun is a very recent film. It was just released this year. The director's name is Pawo Choining Dorji. Dorji was born in Bhutan. He grew up living in India, Switzerland, and Kuwait, where his father was stationed as a diplomat. He attended university in the US, and moving back to Bhutan, he made his first feature film. It was entitled Lunana, the Yak in the Classroom, something that I would realize I hadn't put on this list, and I think it will be available in the spring. Anyway, which that film, Lunana, was a finalist for the 2024 Academy Award for Best International Film. That was his first film. Now he follows that up this year with The Monk and the Gun, which has already made the short list, meaning the top 10 films submitted for the Academy Award for Best International Film. And it's one of them, so it could wind up in the final list. He holds the record. Dorji holds the record for the most films nominated from Bhutan. Two. There were three. And it's interesting because the only other film was a film from 1990 entitled The Cup, and it was directed by Dorji's mentor, Khyentse Norbu, who is a monk and a director. The Monk with a Gun is a surprising, sometimes mysterious, ironic, and very funny satire whose audience may well be the entire world. It's with a population of less than 800,000, Bhutan is sometimes called the last Shangri-La. for its natural beauty, spiritual traditions, and isolation from the din of the modern world, as well as being known for its production of gross national happiness. That is their product. Maybe due to the fact that cars weren't allowed until the 1960s, and television, satellite TV, and the internet were not permitted until 1999. And here the film begins with a crackling radio broadcast in 2006. But as it's only been 7 years since the Kingdom of Bhutan lifted its ban, it's still the most efficient way to bring information to the masses. The broadcast itself informs the people of a bold new form of modernity that's about to arrive in the country, and it's called democracy. The main plot of The Monk and the Gun concerns the old Lama. His name is Kelsang Choje. He's a real-life Lama, by the way, of a small village named Yura. He seems disturbed by the news that the king will be stepping down so as to cede power to the people when they will educate the population about the new system of government in a series of mock or practice elections. The Lama asks his young disciple, Tashi, Tandon Wangchuk, who, by the way, is not a Lama, but he's in real life a rock singer known around the world, to help him with a ritual that will make things right. He won't say what this ritual is, only that it must take place in a few days' time, and that he'll need a pair of guns to perform it. Uh-oh, is the first response. As Tashi wanders the village in search of these weapons, the film pulls away. And this is what I like about the structure of the film. The film pulls away from him to investigate the lives of others as they prepare to take part in their country's first election. It's a mosaic-like approach to storytelling, with the narrative drifting freely between smaller tales that combine to provide a full picture of this community during this time of political upheaval. Reactions to the news of the upcoming election varied sharply, we see, as we first meet Chofel, scowling from his window as a neighbor parades their new widescreen TV. I love it. They're marching the TV through the village, around the village. He's embarrassed by his nation's old-fashioned ways and is enthusiastic about Bhutan joining the modern world for the same reason that he's self-conscious about the size of his own television. It's a matter of keeping up with the Joneses, another American idea on a national scale. Yet he is also seeking to get his daughter a better education so that she would one day become prime minister, while all she's interested is getting an eraser for her homework. Chofel's wife, Chomo, doesn't share his enthusiasm, and I love this little back and forth that they have. In fact, when he's telling her, that she's got to help and get the guy elected that he likes, and she says, "I don't want to hear about politics. My mother-in-law doesn't want to talk to you." They're all fighting, and it's something that will come up again later. In fact, most of the village doesn't share this enthusiasm. They like the king, and they struggle to see what a bunch of politicians making vague promises about industry and freedom will do to affect their lives. They lead up in the mountains. In several scenes, government officials harangue locals into turning up for mock elections that only serve to make the whole notion of democracy seem more ridiculous. Vote this way, this color, or this color, what each color means. Sure enough, neighbors and families are soon divided on political lines. Neighbors resent other neighbors. Kids are picked on at school. In-laws stop speaking to one another. At one mock political rally, the voters are asked to choose between that blue, red, and yellow party, with the officials even encourage them to jeer at each other, at their rivals, pantomiming the political division of those countries in the West that they've heard so much about. And an elderly woman asks, one of the funniest lines in the film, "Why are you teaching us to be so rude? Why are you teaching us to be so rude?" And in the end, almost everyone ends up supporting the Yellow Party, not because any of the promises of its manifesto about preserving the past, but because in Bhutan, yellow is the color associated with the king. The Monk and the Gun draws plenty of humor from this collision of attitudes and ideas, especially after that somewhat clueless but well-financed American, Ronald Coleman. I don't know how many of you got the joke, but if you didn't, Ronald Coleman, the famous English actor, was the star of Shangri-La of Lost Horizons, the film about Shangri-La, the place Bhutan seems to be. So it's a very funny little Easter egg that he buries in the film. But this guy is totally unlike the Ronald Coleman we know. Anyway, it draws, it starts with him. He arrives on the scene hoping to purchase the same rifle that Tashin has been tracking down. Even with the help of his guide and translator, Benji, who we see comes from the city and is an industrious young hustler, Ron still finds himself on a wild goose chase. Along the way, his bungled attempts to make the deal lead to some of the film's funniest interactions and a number of astute observations about the cultural differences between Americans and Bhutanese. But I love it when he goes to, they go to the Lama and he negotiates for the gun and he's offering them what turns out to be like 4 million Bhutanese dollars. And he says, wow, that's a lot of money, but I don't want it. But this gun is like a long, as he tells the man, the gun is like a long lost treasure for him and his people. Attempting to smooth talk the man who owns the gun. And when Ronald offers the owner all this money, the man refuses, feeling it is too much. He later gifts the gun to the young monk instead, to Tash instead, even though we still have no idea what the Lama's intentions are. Let that not escape our minds. Why does he want this gun or guns, period? And when we consider how the film comes to represent a bigger picture critique of how Western concepts, namely look in our direction, especially when the scene shifts to the general store, from mass exporting of toxic masculinity via the James Bond movie they're watching, where he's blowing everybody away with an AK-47, to making black water, which they like to drink. The black water called Coca-Cola. The global drink of choice is corrupting life in this still innocent country. For all the fun the Monk and the Gun has observing this culture clash, it never makes any statement about Bhutan's modernization. It just lets it lay out there. The cinematography captures the country's landscape in all the vibrant beauty, the lush green hills with the brightest blue sky hung above them. It would be easy to romanticize a land like that and hope that it always remains idyllically old-fashioned. But the film also takes time to show how much harder life is when washing your clothes means hunkering over a basin and scrubbing your hands raw. I don't know anything about these modern ways. I don't know if these are good or bad for us, the old Lama admits, when the day of his ritual eventually rolls around. By the way, getting to that ritual, I love the what came to be known as the supa, the shrine. They keep walking around it 3 times, and you're wondering, they're chasing Tashin to get him to give him the gun. And then they promise him he wants the guns from James Bond, the AK-47s, and they have to go and deal with a guy in that nightclub who's going to get them the guns. And meanwhile, the police are on a wild goose chase as well to find Ronald Coleman and his partner. But the old Lama has said, when we finally get to the ritual, and he explains the supas, that when there was hunger and famine, we built a supa, and it helped. When there was a pandemic, we built a supa and it protected us. And now he's building another supa. And the old Lama admits with his ritual, it seems to feel similarly ambivalent. And while the director took his time laying out the various pieces of what proves to be an incredibly well-designed puzzle, when you think about it, he's created a puzzle where everything will make sense. When the Lama's intentions for the guns that Tashi brings them are finally revealed, the film pulls off something truly bold with a humorous and usually hugely satisfying finale, taking what are perhaps the most emotionally and symbolically loaded items in existence and subverting their meaning completely to end on a note of peace, joy, and hope for the future. I love it when he says we have, because if you remember, in a few scenes before this happens, he's aiming the gun at the woman who's running the election. And you think, oh my God, what is he going to do? Assassinate her? And it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's ironic that one of the men brings up the idea of JFK. Well, I remember one of the lamas is tapping him on the shoulder and says, I want you to tell me about democracy and about your presidents, Lincoln and Kennedy, who were both assassinated. And here he is with this gun. I mean, he's leading us to believe something that's not going to happen because God forbid. But anyway, or Buddha forgive in this case. It's so he builds the super when they're burying the guns, and I love it how the two guys get out of it by telling the policeman, well, they were bringing the gun to give to the Lama because they were the guns, the AK-47s, because they were about to arrest them, and he slithers his way out of it with the two guns, giving them to the Lama. And I love it when they focus on the little kid with the toy gun, and he throws it in, and everybody throws their knives in. Everybody is throwing their weapons into the cement. Ironically, up until this point, we've seen how American culture, with its promise of democracy, has been shaping modern Bhutan. But in that final moment, it becomes clear what Bhutan can teach the rest of the world. What Bhutan can teach the rest of the world. And of course, what could be a funnier coda than that little celebration at the end when the Lama presents Ronald Colman with a giant phallus that we've seen being carved throughout the film, and trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. And he's even sitting with it in the truck at one point. But I love it when he says to him, we have to give our guest, I want to give him a special gift for his sacrifice that he's made for us. And he hands him the phallus, which turns out to be the symbol of luck and good fortune in Bhutan. And I thought that was hilarious. I thought the acting, which mostly was unprofessional actors in the film. In fact, I think Ronald Colman was his name is Harry Einhorn. And I couldn't find his name anywhere. So he must have been wandering through Bhutan when they nabbed him to play an American. But I thought it was ironic that they make a guy searching for a gun, so as nebbishy as him, as opposed to a masculine guy looking for a gun that we would see in a movie. But I think that Dorji had a lot of fun with this film, but I think he scored a lot of points. And he makes us look in the mirror, at our own society, especially when it's the young man from the city says that, in America, they have twice as many guns as they have people. It sort of rings true, the whole idea. And we should all look at this as a message from a little country that I hope doesn't change too much because it has democracy. Although if you did watch the 60 Minutes segment on Bhutan that was on a few weeks ago, they said a lot of young people had been leaving. had left because they, you know, when they've seen Paris, you can't keep them down on the farm. So they left the country, and now they've gone back. A lot of them are coming back. I think they've realized the error of their ways, and hopefully will keep Bhutan as a special place to visit. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And now I'd like to open it up for a conversation because I would love to hear what some of you have to say about the film. Uh, so who's going to go first? You know, I have my little fickle finger of fate here. But, you know, and I know who to call on when I want to. Okay, Jackie, go ahead.
It's,
She took her finger on the button 4 times while you were saying.
yeah, I figured you would say that. We both liked it. We both thought it was subtle sarcasm. We liked that. I thought it was a little bit long, and I find myself sometimes thinking where you can cut something once I start that. But I liked it. I thought it had a lot to say about change. I love the wife who said, I don't really want to change. I'm happy with this. All my daughter wants is an eraser. And it makes you realize sometimes people really need to look in their own backyards before they look elsewhere. So I thought it was a good choice. I thought it was interesting. And you're right. I think it says a lot about the world itself.
Yeah, terrific.
Timing is perfect.
That's great. Yeah, I mean it's and when you consider, I don't know, you know, what the total production of Bhutan is in terms of film. They don't make many films, although I've seen at least 4, which I really enjoyed. So to say this little country is making films like this also has a giant statement to make to the world about film itself, about cinema. And hopefully some people who are involved in it are watching it and learning from it. By the way, if you read the credits, and you always should read the credits, there's an interesting name that comes up as one of the producers. And her name is Henson. And she's the daughter of Jim Henson, who produced the film. So obviously Dorji must have gotten to her in some way, and she put up a good deal of money to help produce the film. And I'm thrilled. I couldn't be more thrilled than to see her name up on the screen. So yeah, Jackie.
I thought one other thing that was really pretty interesting, and I'm sure everybody thought this too, was how we look at things. We were just having that conversation today someplace else, is that we all come at things from our own perspectives or our backgrounds or whatever. The phallic symbol, I couldn't figure out at first why we kept seeing that. And then when he was saying that it is their country's symbol of good luck, and yet in our country, it's he got screwed. And I thought that was really pretty interesting, that the 2 completely different versions of that, which is so very typical of the world.
That's a funny comment. That's terrific. Thank you. Susan Pauls.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everybody from Philadelphia. I did see Yak in the Classroom with Shelly before, and I loved this film so much because it was very similar in that it dealt with the culture change and whether people go back to the big city after they've seen Paris, so to speak. And in Yak in the Classroom, Paris was the land, and he left it to go back to the hustle and bustle. But the politics and the encouraging anger and the encouraging people in a family not to speak with each other, and we just lived through this. And it's kind of amazing how prescient it was, given the current politics, which I'm sure the director was not American politics, that, you know, from their point of view, what they saw on the limited TV they had, limited years, this is what they saw, is anger and people in English Parliament hitting each other in the Parliament and screaming and yelling, and that's the way politics are. And they were trying to recapture that loveliness. And I just laughed myself silly.
That's terrific. A great comment. It's true, and one of the comments that comes through in the film is, democracy is usually won through revolution. Democracies went through revolution. Here, they were trying to make a friendly transition to democracy, but their idea of making a friendly transition was to create a revolution, was to make people fight with each other, because that's what they learn.
And you were talking about
you
the
know,
phallus, the men were playing who's got the bigger phallus here,
Dallas, yeah.
bigger gun, bigger prestige,
Prestige.
etc.
Exactly. I mean, even the assistant to the Lama was saying, "Oh, I want the big guns. I want the bigger guns." It's when he looks in the magazine. So yes, they were learning the wrong lessons, some of them. Thank you. Who's next? Anybody? Come on, just jump in there. Raise your hand. Yes, Sandra.
Why were the police after Ronald Coleman, or that doesn't really matter?
No, he was, they must have gotten a message that he was coming into the country and that he was looking for a gun. The Sante, it turns out it was an antique gun, and we
Yeah.
really don't know what his motivation was, except that he calls somebody up and says, "I found it. It's the rarest gun." So my feeling was the motivation was probably to make money with it,
With the
to
gun.
bring it back to the States. Because it really was an old musket, basically, with buckshot, and which the guy even had, and it was used to fight in a war, in another civil war, ironically. So burying of the hatchet was terrific.
It was quite ironical because this was a peaceful country and they're trying to teach them democracy, but to fight and to argue with each other was just the opposite of what they really are. So
Yeah.
it was
Unnatural for them.
unnatural.
for them.
Photography was beautiful.
Yes, it was.
oh.
It was. Cinematography really captured the country itself. It was beautifully done. Yeah, Marilyn.
I definitely enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed it more after I watched the 60 Minutes on Bhutan, and it sort of brought more of it to the fold. So if anybody hasn't seen it yet, just Google it, and it's absolutely worth seeing. And I thought that the contrast between the economy that you sort of see at the West, especially the United States, and the value of people and their happiness, and the two are always at loggerheads, and in some societies way more than others, and much more lopsided. And boy, if somehow they could find a way to keep their values and get a little more economy into it to get those people back from Australia to be part of their country, because that's where most of them just, when they left Bhutan, that's where they went. That would be something that hopefully the rest of the world could learn something from that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. They are modernizing a great deal in terms of building roads, in terms of making it accessible. It's let's just hope it doesn't corrupt them, is really the case.
Well, they are turning to tourism because that's one of the ways that they're going to build their economy. And it was totally, I mean, nobody went as a tourist. They didn't want them. But, money is what they still sort of need. And hopefully they can maintain their values because they are amazing.
Yeah, and I was impressed by some of the houses in the film. The way the people live was very impressive. Larry, we should put it on the list. Anyway, who else? Somebody else out there. Come on, you got to have comments. when you don't have comments, I assume you didn't like the film. Yes, Sandy.
Hi, I'm sorry, we're from Connecticut, and we
Uh-huh.
will be very happy to send the $10 for joining your event. We met Shelly at another event that he did. Larry and I, my husband, had the privilege of volunteering in Bhutan in 1991 for 6 weeks. And Sandra, I think it was, who saw Luana,
Lunana, no, Susan Paul,
Lunana,
yeah.
the yak in the classroom. Well, I taught there, not at where they were, but I taught when I went to Bhutan, and my husband was a doctor at the hospital, and it was, remember, in 1991, it was before the internet. So I just want to tell you about a couple of things that just really were important to us. One, it was life affirming and life changing. In the entire time we were there, we never heard the word no.
Mm.
If you couldn't do something on a Thursday, but you could do it on Friday, you didn't say, I can't make that on Thursday. You would say, would you like to do it on Friday? And it was understood that you meant you couldn't do it on Thursday. And they went out of their way to think positively in the way in which they communicated. English is the language of the country, even though, because it's the language of the government, even though Sangha is the language of Bhutan. And they do have a written language and books and documents. That was one thing. The other thing is we had an experience with Chofel, who was our guide throughout the time we were there. And we were on weekends, mostly Sunday, because I worked 6 days a week, because school is on Saturday as well. And my husband had a little bit more freedom, which was interesting. It's sort of the reverse of the way it works in the States. But Chofel we came to America after we had been to Bhutan. He had never been to America. And Larry took him around here. And what Larry experienced, he'll tell you about.
Well, one of the things, we went to the Empire State Building, thinking that Chofel walked down 3 miles and then up 3 miles to get to his school. And he would do that twice a day, in reverse, down and valley and back up. I thought that the elevator would really move him, but he wasn't very impressed with that. He came to our house and he made us emidatsi, which is made with chilies and onions. And he wanted to get back home. That's where he belonged. And that was a long time ago, but we saw that the film that was done, the Lunana film, was done first. And Thimphu, the capital, was very much like that. The roads that we saw in this film were not there. They were all, even in the capital, they were dirt roads. And going from Paro to Thimphu was an exercise in terror, with young drivers riding along mountain roads with no side rails and no way for 2 cars to pass each other except at designated spots. And I saw us rolling off the mountain, but
Oh, wow.
it goes on. Anyway, it was a great experience, but the big thing is Buddhism is a way of life. And I loved the ending of the film. Incidentally, Shelly, I think you nailed everything you said was perfect.
Thank you.
Which means that you agree with us.
Yeah.
But I love the ending, where the question is he going to go home? And that's a Buddhist kind of conceit. You don't know what he's going to do. And I think that that's part of the charm of the film.
That was Lunana.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
Lunana.
Lunana, yes, I understand.
And,
Yeah.
and Lunana, they leave that, but even in this film, there's this sense of what's going to happen with the democracy, because
Yes.
a very silly, funny thing happened. I happened to have at the time a Mercedes, a baby Benz. It was the first small Mercedes that was not very expensive. And I had it at the time. And I was with Chofel, and down the street came the Queen's car, because one of my duties as a teacher was on Fridays, the King's children came to kindergarten. And they had guards, and it was very interesting because I couldn't go into the room without the guards hovering over me and making sure I'd be okay. But after the first 2 days, the first 2 Fridays, they came to hear my stories. And I taught these kindergarten children things that we would do in kindergarten here. And it was a lot of fun. But the Queen's car was riding down the street, and Chofel was with me. And I said, "Oh, my car." He said, "You have the Queen's car?" I really had it was a moment of shock for me, because it was so funny that was happening. I was so innocent as to how innocent they were at that time. They had very little TV. They had no gym for girls. The only gym they had was basketball, although archery was a sport. But the teachers asked me if I had any music for exercise, and I happened to bring music. So I had a tape player and tapes, and I ran they asked me to run an exercise class. Well, I could do that, so I did. And when I left, the teenage girls, got a gym class at the school. And it was very exciting. And I don't know I know it went on for a while because we had contact with people, but I don't know. I assume that there's been more flexibility in their curriculum. They really, it was wonderful. Artists made charcoal for me. People who created art, which is sacred art. I was teaching art to kids. And the way I got the job was they were supposed to assign me the job in the States from the UN. And what happened was, when I get to Thimphu, Larry goes off to work and they don't know me from Adam. And so I decide to follow some children to school. And I get to a school, and I could go one of 2 ways, and I chose one way. Turned out it was the perfect choice, because I did get to know the King's children. And the other thing was, I walk in to speak to the headmaster, and I introduce myself, and I tell him I'm a teacher from the United States. And I tell him I'm from Westport, Connecticut. And they all knew Westport, Connecticut. They didn't know New York. They didn't know Washington, D.C., but they knew Westport, Connecticut, because Save the Children had its main offices in Westport, Connecticut. And they were a very big presence in the country. So it was like I became a star. I didn't have to be vetted any further. But the principal said to me, "I'm so glad you're here, because we need you. You can teach the 5th grade. We have a new teacher, and I'm going to take you to him, and he's going to let you teach his class." So for the next 5.5 weeks, that's what I wound up doing primarily. Now, in a million years, can I imagine that this would have happened in the United States? The union would have been down on my head from,
All right.
the teacher would have been not very nice, but it was wonderful.
That's
We had
fabulous.
many wonderful experiences.
Oh, I'm sure. And thank you for this whole enlightening discussion. Is terrific. I loved it. But I have a couple of questions for you and Larry. Do you keep in touch with Chofel?
We are back and forth in touch. Yes.
Oh, that's great.
It's very difficult. First of all, the people we knew, it was 20,
30
30,
years ago.
30 years ago. And for a while we were in close touch, but there was a simplicity and a naivete that made it difficult. I got a note from Kesang, who was part of a couple that we were very close with. And he said, I need some kind soul to send me to Italy to study. My government will pay for transportation, and all I need is somebody to pay for housing and school. And it came like a young kid asking an aunt or an uncle for something without understanding the implications. And
Mhm.
Kesang asked me to send him glasses just like the king's. And when I sent him the glasses that I thought were like the king's, he said, these are no good because my nose is too wide.
Wow.
Very funny. Now, the main question I have is, did you happen to run into Sam Jaffe?
No.
Now, you're gonna not understand my comment. Most of you probably won't understand my comment, but those of you, thank you, Susan. Those of you who saw the original Lost Horizons with Ronald Coleman, Sam Jaffe played the Grand High Lama in that film.
Got that.
He imparted his
Okay.
wisdom. And here was this little Jewish man playing a llama in Lost Horizons, which I thought was very
I'll
funny.
have to see it.
Yeah, you can look for it. It's usually on Turner Classic Movies. It shows up once in a while. But I do say all of you should see it. It's a wonderful. It is a wonderful film. It hasn't dated really. It's just this terrific, and it is the model. Bhutan was the model for Shangri-La. So thank you. That was fabulous to hear those experiences. It's great.
You're
I
fabulous.
have a question for you, Sandy. When
Yeah.
you taught for all those weeks in Bhutan to fifth grade, what did you teach? Like, how did you figure out what you wanted to teach them?
Well, I
'Cause
look at the,
teach fifth grade, so I understand the age. So,
they were probably not at what our fifth grade level would be. They would probably be closer to third grade in English. With math, English, I taught art. I taught art to, I had a lot of jobs during the day with different classrooms, but my main focus was these fifth graders. And they had little notebooks. It's very hard to explain. If Lunana shows you the schoolroom. Now, the schoolroom that I taught in was not a schoolroom, it was more of a school. It was in this capital city. But you have to imagine that the temple that you saw in the film had no buildings other than there were none of these big apartment complexes that you sort of saw in 1991. They had no real access to Western, other than the films. They did have VHS the tapes that they could see film, but I taught them what I knew of curriculum that they were able to. My training is as an educator, so it was not a problem.
wow,
That's terrific.
fabulous.
It's fascinating. It must have been fascinating. What an experience.
Our sadness is that we didn't go back, but my son-in-law and one grandson they spent
3 weeks.
3 weeks over there and brought back the reports. They didn't find some of our friends who we had not been in touch with in at least since before the pandemic.
And how is democracy? Do they know? Did they tell you? How has that evolved?
It's very interesting. It's very hard to think of it as evolving. When we were there, they had some real problems with the Nepalese. And it all wasn't as Shangri-La as we would like it to be. The Nepalese were the second-class citizens. They were not treated well, but you didn't hear about it. You could see it, but you didn't hear about it. It wasn't talked about. Their whole their social structure was very limiting for outsiders. Everybody got the feeling that you could go anywhere. Tourists at that time, when we were there, we were not considered tourists. We were housed by the government. We were taken every place we could go. But if you wanted to come as a tourist, first of all, I think you had to spend $1,500 a day. And you had to stay, and they had limits. I think it was 2,500 people,
The limit on number.
a number of people a month. And so tourists were not taken every place. We were able to get to some places because we were working with the government. And there was a very much an attempt at people. They were afraid of volunteers because volunteers were stealing.
They would buy artifacts.
They would buy artifacts.
Like the gun and gun belts.
That was a real thing. I mean,
Wow.
but you didn't, and it was all underground. You didn't, it didn't shock me that they were able to find 2 guns in a nightclub. With that exchange did not shock me.
People would whisper
Interesting.
and say, do you want such and such? And US dollars would be welcome.
And that's why they didn't like a lot of tourists.
Mm. So there was essentially a black market in the
It was
country.
quiet. We didn't participate.
Yeah, wow. Interesting. Interesting. Well, thank you for sharing all these stories with
That's
us.
Awesome.
Well, thank you
It
for
really
sharing.
adds color to more color to the film itself, but to the idea of what Bhutan is. It just seems like a fascinating country.
But Shelley, you know, what the film really captured is the soul of the people.
Mhm.
They are like that. And it's kind of bittersweet that it can't be like that, because the internet has changed the world.
Yes.
And people and kids, and these are smart people. These are not people who are, yokels. These are smart people with very creative. This film director is a brilliant filmmaker.
Yes.
And
As is his mentor. His mentor is also a brilliant filmmaker who is a Buddhist monk. And that was basically, he brought back his learning of film, but he really taught him about making film in Bhutan. He used him as a model. If you were to see the film The Cup, it is from the early 90s, and it's a story about a group of llamas who want to see the World Cup and how they go about it, because there are no TVs available, but it's how they go about getting one to see it. And it's a very also very funny and very touching and very satirical film. So if you can, and I think it's available, it should be available on maybe on Amazon, but I know it's available as a DVD, and it might be in the library. I don't know.
Well, I
But
would
it's
have
just
missed
called
it.
The Cup.
If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have seen it for quite a while. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
by the way, Jared, you can see the impact most in the kids is they're all wearing Western dress. When we were there, that was frowned upon.
There was nobody walking around in a
You didn't
t-shirt.
see people walking around, kids walking around in t-shirts and jeans. And you saw people dressed in their national dress. Occasionally you'd see a t-shirt. But when we left, they asked us to leave things. And we did. We gave Choville our backpacks. We gave them all of the things that they needed. And
the nice blazer
in-
that I brought.
and Lanana, you see that exchange where he gets those boots in this young man who's going to teach in the school gets boots in a shop that are American boots, and he gets something in Gore-Tex. And it turns out that this is not a good Bhutanese clothing that is going to work properly. And it was true. They knew how to fight the elements differently.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I will tell the group here, coming soon, Lunana, the Yak in the Classroom. I'm not sure. I think it's available on Canopy. I will check and see. Since we did this one.
We saw it on Prime, by the way.
Yeah, that's where it was. That's where I had shown it from. So it's great. This was a great discussion. It's like what we did the last time. We've gone from film to culture entirely, which I love. This is great. This is what cinema is all about. This is what cinema should be in terms of what we do with it. So I thank you.
But you know
thank
what,
you.
it just made me think that their clothing, as you said, originally they wouldn't have jeans and t-shirts, but to me, their clothing was their identity, and their identity was their strength.
Part of it, yeah.
The
Well,
clothing-
it's interesting you bring up the clothing situation, because he made it apparent in the film that one or two of them were wearing branded T-shirts, and they had sayings on them. They were which is they obviously go for brands, what they see, and wearing the T-shirts. I've seen that in other films as well. So I don't know whether it's wanting to touch the world, wanting to be like the world, bringing it in a sense, but they're brand conscious. They become brand conscious as a result. So, and I think that was Dorji, the director, his way of another subtle touch in the film, showing somebody in a T-shirt with a saying on it. I think it was the young man from the city that was wearing it. So it shows that another element of what they've become.
It's important I think, not to get trapped by becoming paternalistic. They should remain the way they were.
Yes.
And there's that temptation. I was an orthopedic surgeon, and one day in the hospital, somebody came in with a fracture of their neck, which had caused a paralysis of the total body. And I went to the hospital superintendent and I said, "What are we going to do?" And she said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "In the States, this person would be sent to the operating room to have the neck stabilized so that the paralysis did not extend even a little bit. So stabilization of the spine of the neck was very important." And she said, "We can't do that. We don't have any money. It would involve paying people in India to do the surgery and sending somebody there." And I said, "What should we do?" And she said, "Tell his son to bring him good food." So there's a price to being in a country that's not yet developed. In this country, that person may have had some kind of life, wheelchair, true, but some kind of life. There, the likelihood is that he would be gone in months.
Well, we don't, the hospitals themselves, they had windows in operating rooms,
No air conditioning.
no air conditioning,
Flies.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully that's all changed.
Then maybe,
I would hope so.
I don't know.
Yeah, that would be the
Their
hope.
their expectation level is different also. I mean, we have to always tell ourselves to manage our expectations. Their expectations are so different from what ours would be.
Well, I think they're being Buddhists. There is a certain level of I don't know whether you call it expectation, but a belief in terms of their faith, and how they look at the world and how they look at life itself, and also the transcendence of life. I think is important to them.
I think that's true.
Well, this has been enlightening, as I've said, and I thank you. And anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? Well, the next film is in 2 weeks. And it is what I found to be an uplifting film. Some of you may have encountered it along the way, may have encountered it with me. But it is I thought it would be a good film to end the year with. And it's entitled The King of Masks. The King of Masks. And it's from China. It's from the 90s. It's a wonderful story that takes place in the 30s in China during a time of famine, and again, a time of transition. And it's about a man known as the King, and he is a mask changer. You'll see what I mean when you watch the film. And he has a very special talent that's handed down from father to son, except he has no son to hand it down to. And he buys in the market, he buys a little boy to teach him what to do. But that's all I will tell you, because the story takes its twists and turns. It is also, it shows us a little bit of Chinese opera at the time, as well as this mask changing talent, which was prevalent. So I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, and wish you then a happy new year. So I bid you adieu, and have a good 2 weeks, and I'll look forward to seeing you then.
And thank you, Shelly, for.
I
the
will send out an
wonderful-
email reminding everybody about the film, so you can look forward to that.
Thank you very much for
Thank
having
you
us.
very much. And thank you, Sandy and Larry.
Yes,
Could you
thank
do
you
me a
both.
favor? And it's the Stirling Library, is that it?
Go to www.stirlingfriends.org.
Okay, is it STIR or STE?
STIR.
Okay,
And then
Thank
go to, yeah,
thank you.
try and figure it out that way.
Yes, and I remind everybody, if you you have any questions, anything you want to ask me, I'm available. I'm always available. So you just drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. So,
Once again, thank you so very much. This was wonderful. Thank
A
you.
Night,
pleasure.
everybody.
Night,
a
everybody.
pleasure. Take
Thanks.
care. Thank you, Sandy and Larry. Again,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.